Imagine waking up centuries from now perfectly preserved. Every memory, every nuance of your personality utterly intact. That's the promise whispered by the future of cryonics, a vision of defying death itself. But what if the very act of attempting this ultimate preservation, even in its most advanced theoretical form, has already destroyed the essence of who you are? What if the brain you envision being preserved is at a fundamental level already gone, a mere structural shell? The harsh truth is that even with today's most advanced experimental vitrification of whole mammalian brains, like the rabbit brains scientists have managed to preserve, proving perfect ultrastructural preservation at the synaptic level, the tiny connections crucial for memory and personality, remains a profound scientific challenge. We can't even truly test if it works, or if the fundamental information has been erased. It's a mistake to believe this is simply a matter of better freezers or more advanced chemicals. This isn't a technological hurdle easily overcome. It's a collision with the very boundaries of our understanding of life, death, and consciousness itself. By the end, you'll see why the most critical barrier isn't just freezing at all, but something far more intimate to your very identity, something science hasn't even begun to fully grasp. The popular image of cryonics, where a frozen body waits patiently for a revival, glosses over 5 fundamental scientific walls that stand between us and anything resembling a successful future. These aren't minor technical glitches, they are existential roadblocks. The first and most immediate scientific wall cryonics faces isn't even about freezing. It's about what happens before the process can even properly begin, the warm ischemia time. Picture this. A person is declared clinically dead. Their heart stops, breathing ceases. At this exact moment, the race against an invisible, irreversible clock begins. Every second that passes with no blood flow, no oxygen reaching the brain, is a second of irreplaceable damage. Even a few minutes of oxygen deprivation at normal body temperature can cause irreversible brain damage. We're not talking about minor memory loss. We're talking about widespread cellular death, a cascade of destruction that begins almost instantly. For cryopreservation to have any hope of preserving a functional mind, this ischemia time needs to be minimized to an absolute fraction of what's currently typical in medical settings. Organ donation protocols, which are already incredibly time-sensitive, aim for minimal warm ischemia, often under 30 minutes, but even that is often too long for the delicate brain tissue. The ideal scenario for cryonics would involve having a specialized team, fully equipped, present at the exact moment of clinical death, ready to immediately begin cooling and perfusing the body with cryoprotective agents. This logistical nightmare requires a near instantaneous response, often in circumstances that are inherently unpredictable and chaotic. Imagine trying to coordinate a full medical team, specialized equipment, and complex chemical solutions to be on standby for a sudden, unexpected cardiac arrest. The reality for most individuals seeking cryopreservation is that they will experience a significant warm ischemia time, irrevocably damaging the very brain they hope to preserve long before the first cryoprotectant even touches their cells. This initial critical window is often overlooked, overshadowed by the dramatic image of ultra-cold storage, but it is perhaps the most brutal and unavoidable barrier of all. And it's just the beginning of the chemical onslaught. Once the initial race against ischemia is run, the next formidable wall appears. The very chemicals designed to save cells become their greatest threat. To prevent ice crystals from forming inside cells, which would shred them from within, cryonics relies on a process called vitrification. This involves replacing much of the body's water with cryoprotective agents, or CPAs, substances like glycerol and dimethyl sulfoxide DMSO. These chemicals essentially turn the cellular water into a glass-like solid instead of ice, maintaining the structural integrity. The problem, CPAs are inherently toxic. At the high concentrations required to prevent ice formation in complex tissues, these chemicals can damage cells. Think of it like this. You need a powerful acid to dissolve a harmful substance, but that acid is also caustic to the surrounding environment. Scientists are in a delicate balancing act, trying to use just enough CPA to prevent ice, but not so much that it kills the cells through chemical poisoning. This toxicity can lead to a cascade of cellular dysfunction, mitochondrial damage, and altered gene expression. It's a double-edged sword. Without CPAs, ice formation is guaranteed destruction. With CPAs, you introduce a different, albeit potentially more subtle form of damage. Researchers are constantly seeking less toxic CPA cocktails and better delivery methods, but the fundamental challenge remains. These agents are designed to drastically alter cellular environments, and biological systems are incredibly sensitive to such changes. It's not a matter of finding a perfectly harmless chemical that does the job. It's about mitigating the unavoidable harm. Even if this chemical gauntlet is somehow passed, the fragile state created is far from stable, leading us to our next unseen wall. So the body has been perfused with toxic but necessary cryoprotectants and cooled down to an amorphous glass state, seemingly bypassing the destructive power of ice. This is vitrification, the supposed triumph over freezing. But this glass is far from the stable, inert material you might imagine. It's a metastable state, a precarious balance that can shatter with the slightest deviation, presenting the third major scientific wall, devitrification. Think of it like supercooled water. It can exist as a liquid below its freezing point, but a tiny disturbance, a speck of dust, or a slight temperature fluctuation, and it instantly crystallizes. The vitrified state is similar. If cooling isn't perfect, or if temperatures aren't maintained rigorously below the glass transition point, which is around minus 130 degrees Celsius, a temperature colder than the coldest place on Earth, this delicate glass can devitrify or recrystallize. When this happens, damaging ice crystals form, precisely what the entire vitrification process was designed to prevent. Long-term storage, which is the entire point of cryonics, demands absolute temperature stability for centuries. Any power outage, any equipment malfunction, even a subtle warming in one part of the body could lead to devitrification and irreversible damage. Imagine the challenge of maintaining perfect, consistent temperatures across a complex, heterogeneous biological system like a human body for generations. It's not just about getting cold, it's about staying perfectly cold without variation for an indefinite future. This isn't a one-time achievement, it's an eternal vigilance against a physical phenomenon that constantly seeks to revert to a more stable, destructive state. And even if you could achieve this impossible feat, the problems don't end there. The act of warming the body back up presents its own set of devastating challenges. Let's imagine, against all odds, that a body has been perfectly vitrified, perfectly stored for centuries, and is now ready for reanimation. The ice crystals were avoided, the glass state held firm. Now the monumental task of rewarming begins. Even if tissues are perfectly preserved and rewarmed without devitrification, a significant and often devastating challenge arises: reperfusion injury. This is the fourth scientific wall, a cruel paradox where the very act of restoring life-sustaining blood flow causes damage. When blood flow is restored to tissues that have been deprived of oxygen for a long period, even if that period was spent in a vitrified state, a cascade of harmful events occurs. This includes oxidative stress, where unstable molecules called free radicals attack cellular components, inflammation, as the immune system goes into overdrive, and microvascular dysfunction, where tiny blood vessels become blocked or damaged. These factors combine to prevent tissues and organs from regaining normal function. This isn't a theoretical problem. It's a well-known and constantly studied issue in organ transplantation, where donor organs suffer reperfusion injury upon being connected to the recipient's circulatory system. For a single kidney or liver, medical science has developed strategies to mitigate this, but it remains a major hurdle for successful transplantation. Now, scale that up to an entire human body, with every organ, every tissue, every nerve ending needing to regain perfect function simultaneously. The complexity becomes astronomical. The very act of reintroducing the elements of life, oxygen, and nutrients via blood, becomes a source of profound damage, making the path to full functional recovery incredibly difficult, perhaps impossible with our current understanding. This leads us to the ultimate, most profound wall, the very definition of what we are trying to preserve. We've navigated the immediate death, the toxic chemicals, the fragile glass state, and the injury of rewarming. Now we confront the fifth most profound scientific wall, one that transcends mere biological preservation, the preservation of consciousness, identity, and the dynamic information encoded in the brain. This is the hidden payoff I mentioned earlier, the true unquantifiable challenge. Even if we could achieve perfect ultrastructural preservation of a brain, meaning every neuron, every synapse, every cellular component looks exactly as it did before vitrification, a fundamental scientific unknown remains. Is the dynamic information encoded in the brain truly frozen and later reactivable? We're not just talking about cellular survival. We're talking about the specific patterns of neural activity, the intricate dance of electrical and chemical signals that constitute memories, emotions, and self-awareness. These are the memory engrams, the physical substrates of our subjective experience. Consider the breakthrough in 2023, where scientists successfully cryopreserved and functionally recovered a whole rat kidney. This was an astounding achievement, employing sophisticated robotic perfusion and magnetic nanoparticle rewarming. But a kidney, while complex, is not a brain. It doesn't hold consciousness. The sheer leap from a functional kidney to a functionally conscious human brain is not merely one of scale, but one of fundamental scientific understanding. We don't fully understand how consciousness emerges from the brain's physical structure and dynamic activity in the first place. Can you truly freeze a melody in midair and expect it to resume playing when warmed? Can you pause a complex computation and expect it to restart perfectly without losing data? Measuring functional integrity at this level, post-warming, is impossible with current technology. We can look at images of preserved synapses, but we cannot test if the information they encode, the memories, the personality is still there, dormant and ready to reactivate. This isn't just a scientific challenge. It delves into the profound philosophical questions of what constitutes life and identity in a non-living vitrified state. Are we preserving a perfect blueprint or merely an inert husk? Without understanding the essence of consciousness, we are blindly attempting to preserve something we don't fully comprehend. Ralph Merkle, a pioneer in nanotechnology and an advocate for cryonics, has openly stated that proving perfect ultrastructural preservation at the synaptic level remains a profound scientific challenge. The Brain Preservation Foundation, which he co-founded, focuses on this very issue, acknowledging that the preservation of physical structure is only the first step. The true test, the reactivation of mind, is a chasm we haven't even begun to bridge. This leads to a larger systemic problem, the lack of mainstream scientific validation and funding. The U.S. National Institutes of Health or National Science Foundation provide very little dedicated funding specifically for whole-body human cryopreservation and reanimation research. Most fundamental research in this niche is privately funded, significantly slowing progress compared to other medical fields. Without broad, rigorous scientific inquiry and investment, these 5 fundamental walls will remain precisely that: walls, not hurdles. The dream of cryonics is powerful, tapping into our deepest desires for immortality. But as we've seen, the reality is far more complex, a labyrinth of scientific unknowns and seemingly insurmountable barriers. From the immediate death of brain cells before the process even begins, to the toxic chemicals required, the inherent instability of the vitrified state, the paradox of reperfusion injury upon rewarming, and finally, the ultimate mystery of consciousness itself. Cryonics faces fundamental scientific challenges that cannot be wished away. It forces us to ask, are we chasing a scientific miracle or a ghost? Perhaps the real reason we're drawn to cryonics isn't just the promise of eternal life, but the profound human struggle to accept our own impermanence. What other grand scientific quests are shaped more by hope than by hard data? Tell us in the comments what you think the most significant barrier to cryonics truly